So Rob, when you think about the transformation journey ahead for large financial institutions, what do you think are the characteristics that are going to separate the winners from the losers?
That's a great question, Alex. I think that it is a cultural transformation. It's something that's led from the top, and it needs to be holistic. So I think that looking at this as incremental projects by project that have a return certainly is great. But if it's not holistically viewed as a program, I think that you won't achieve transformational results.
Great. Now, when you think about investing in innovators, you've made a ton of investments in early stage companies. What are the dynamics that you think are going to be different this time around with AI? And what are the characteristics of the leaders of the fintechs that you see out there?
Sure. Well, it does always start with the team, right? It starts with the leadership and the team and the vision. I think what's different this time is that, having built a startup in the early 2000s, the things that you needed to do, find compute power, determine if you were going to do it on your own or you would potentially leverage other computing power, building, assembling all the tools to build the software, building security in. Most of that is taken care of today. I mean, there are solutions now. I could fire up an AWS instance and have an application built literally just by envisioning what I need to build. And there are tools out there, as you know, through Gen AI that will compile that tool for me and let me be able to test that readily with customers.
Yep.
And that's fundamentally different. So I think that transition from vision to actualizing that vision in production is much, much more rapid today.
Yep.
And the cost to do that is much less.
Yep. So back to the thinking around sort of whether or not the fintechs have an advantage versus the corporates have an advantage, because corporates have the access to the same kind of tools. What do you think about sort of that dynamic?
They do, but it's sort of, I would equate it to the large organizations are building on top of the mountain. So they have the mountain, they have the infrastructure built, and they're building something at that very pinnacle. The startups are starting out with a blank sheet of paper, right? They've got, it's a field and they can build in that field.
Yep.
There are advantages to both. The advantages to building in the field is I'm not bound by any of the infrastructure. I'm not bound by the height of the mountain, the breadth of the mountain. I'm bound by really what I can achieve and envision based on that. So a lot of advantages in having a mountain, and you've got a mountain of customers, but you also have a mountain of technology debt. You've got a mountain of infrastructure. You've got a mountain of policies and processes that have been built maybe over 40 years, some of which are important today, some of which might not be as important, but they're all well, instituted within that organization. And that tends to hold organizations back, right? If I can start with a blank field, and I certainly have a running start because I've got all the tools that I can do and leverage in building that becomes a tremendous advantage in my mind.
Great. And so if you think about if you were anointed the head of an AI transformation effort at a large organization, how do you judge or how do you get organizationally ready for something like that? What are the first couple of moves you would make?
Well, I think it starts with philosophical alignment at the top. So the board and the CEO have to be aligned that this is something that can change their organization fundamentally, but if they don't adapt to it, it can also change their organization in terms of becoming, rapidly smaller by not being successful, by not competing in the right way. So you have to have that alignment at the board and the CEO level. And it's easy to say, it's really harder to do because following that, if you have alignment and you really believe you have alignment, and then you encounter a challenge where existing business is done in one particular way and the business doesn't want to change and take advantage of a new way via Gen AI. If you're stopped there and you have to pause and debate it, then you don't have philosophical alignment, right? You really don't. It has to be a commitment and belief by the board and the CEO that this is urgently important to get done. And the nature of the franchise and the success of the franchise is dependent upon it.
Now, you talked a little bit earlier about the need for that it's going to be very difficult for a BAU organization to change this rapidly internally. Like, how do you think about that and setting up kind of like labs or parallel organization?
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think one thing you have to do is step back and not be bound by the existing organizational structure. If you're a large organization, you probably have a heavily matrixed organization, which is highly efficient, makes sense. You know, if you have 40,000 employees or 100,000 employees, you don't want everyone purchasing, you know, going through their own procurement processes or their own HR processes. Yep. But the nature of that matrix is for efficiency, not for speed. And it's very, very difficult to make those decisions that are critical on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis if you're beholden to a matrix organization. So whether you do it within the organization, within the structure, or out, it has to be a different operating mandate. So if you said that, you know, if I were the czar of transformation, I wouldn't necessarily demand a separate organization that wasn't matrix, that was directly responsible. But what I would say is that as we direct activity throughout that, we can't have a debate about that, because if we stop to debate every one of those, then, you know, across the functional areas, I may have 12 debates on every decision that I make.
Yep.
And that, you know, is a death knell at that point.
Yep.
I think it's harder to do it within the organization.
Yep.
You know, there's certainly a cost of doing it outside of the organization. I think the return on that is speed.
Yep.
The return on that is being able to try, fail quickly, and move on. It's tough to fail quickly in a large organization because everyone is, as they should be, very protective of their customers. And you want to bring something to market that isn't fully formed because it's an idea that you have, and you can then rapidly improve that. Most organizations that have, you know, large customer bases want that to be perfect before it goes out, which is the opposite of, you know, test and fail quickly and succeed quickly.
Absolutely. So organizing around speed becomes the priority.
Exactly. That's right.
So Rob, when you think ahead, in 5 years, financial services will?
In 5 years, in my opinion, financial services will really blend products together. Products today are really an artificial construct. If I am a customer of a bank, I owe you money in terms of the loans that I've taken out. You owe me money in terms of interest on the accounts that I have. It's an exchange of value. Today, we break that down into 50 different products. I think there'll be a blending over time where you'll see less of discrete products and more of a holistic financial relationship.
That's great.